Another big thing is just making sure like all the key decision makers are available like during the first
Yeah.
review round. That's really big.
I mean, if not on the first round, getting them in on the second round,
Mhm.
because if you wait until we're in the mastering phase, which like I can understand why some people would want to wait. It's going to
Yep.
look its best.
Yep.
But if there's any changes that happen, then it's usually out of scope. You start going over budget, there's overages, there's additional editing. And so, yeah, I 100% agree. Getting those decision makers in on the project, who needs to have a say on what's being said and how it's being said as early as possible, hopefully in pre-production, so that you're fixing it in pre-production
Yep.
versus fixing it in post
Yep.
if there are like major alignment issues. Hi, welcome to Unlocked, a podcast about growing your business through the power of video. I'm Dan West, owner and creative director at Blue Key Media, a production company in Minneapolis. And today I'm joined with another one of our team members from the Blue Key team, Jared Myers. Welcome to the show, Jared.
Glad to be here.
Jared, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So I work as the post-production manager at Blue Key Media. So I handle everything that has to do with post-production. So the post schedule, the video like editing, and making sure that we get those videos out to the clients on time. That's all done through me.
Yes, and you are a godsend for the team. What you do on bringing everything together, it's the final touches of a video where the story comes to life. Tell us a little bit more about your background in filmmaking and kind of what led you to where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. So I started kind of with filmmaking when I was in high school. I took a broadcasting class. I was really into like making movies with like my friends, and I'm the oldest of 5 boys, so I'd have my younger brothers being like my go-to actors for my movies in high school. But then I took this broadcasting class, and it got me really interested in like pursuing it as a career. And what was really cool about the class is we made a news story, like an actual news show each week.
Mm-hmm.
And for the news show, we did like commercials, and I really enjoyed editing those. And so when I was looking at schools, I knew already that I really wanted to do something with filmmaking, especially leaning towards editing. And so I went to school up at MSUM, and then ended up transferring back down here to the cities where I grew up, to Northwestern, and did like an exchange program out in like for a semester out in LA as well. And then after that, I ended up getting a job at a production company as like an assistant editor. Worked my way up in the post production team there. Got a lot of experience with editing for client projects, commercials, and actually met you at
Yeah.
that company. Yeah,
I know,
Yeah.
isn't that a
Yeah,
small
so
world?
we got to work on a film project together there, and then ended up coming to Blue Key and working as a post production manager here. Been involved with filmmaking now for the last 10 years, which is crazy.
And you also are a professor now.
I am, yeah. So I also teach now at Northwestern. So I am the post-production teacher. So I teach the one editing class for the communications program at Northwestern. And it's really cool. I get to still stay in touch with students
Yeah.
at the school and with the other professors there, and even have like some of the students helping us out here as interns or just helping us PAs on shoots. So it's been really fun.
Yeah. Today we're talking about the post-production process and what it is and how it fits into the grand scheme of things. I'm sure most people listening know what post-production is, but we'll hopefully talk through how to best maximize the post-production process, make it an easy experience, and what we can do early on in the process to make your life easier. So we're not saying, let's fix it in post.
My favorite saying.
And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the phrase fixed in post too. But maybe talk to us a little bit about the post-production process as it relates to like commercial projects and the types of stuff we're working on.
Yeah, so post-production begins directly after or in the middle of production. So when everything's being filmed, as the post-production manager, I'm overseeing like the editing process. So we're taking in the footage as it's being shot, logging and sorting the footage. And kind of the first step of the editing process is to create what we call the A-roll cut. So that's going to be taking the story sound bites and cutting them together in order to tell the story. So it's just kind of creating the skeleton for the edit going
And
forward.
and where did the term A-roll come from? Because we use the phrases A-roll, B-roll a lot as we talk about an edit
Yeah.
and filming. And sometimes I can see like clients being like, okay, what is that if they've never done video before? So
Yeah.
where does A-roll come from? And tell us like what B-roll is.
Yeah, so A-roll originally was from like the A camera. So it's like everything from the main camera that was being shot, you're assembling it in like an actual roll of film called the A-roll film. So that's going to be like the main camera shots. So telling the like the main sound bites.
So if
bringing
it's
those
an
and putting them together.
interview-based video, it's the interviews.
Yeah, it would be
like-
the interviews, or if you're telling like a narrative-based video, just the main like script
Yep.
segments that you're filming. And then B-roll originally was going to be then those supplement visual pieces on top. So like just additional images that you're going to be using to tell the story visually that you'd be cutting on top of the interview sound bites.
Right. So the things that if they're talking about a specific product, it's the shots of the product.
Yep.
It's people using the product,
Exactly.
not the person talking about the experience.
Yeah, yeah. So you're really using the B-roll to visually tell the story and show it.
And
as it's
and
happening.
why do we do the A-roll first? I mean, I from an editing perspective, like why do we go down that route of A-roll and then adding B-roll and
So the main purpose for like editing the A-roll first is in order to make sure that you have all your story sound bites in the places that they need to be. So it's mainly for efficiency, so that you can like have your whole story edit put together before you start working in the additional clips. Because once you start working the B-roll clips, you're gonna have a number more clips on your timeline, and so having that A-roll cut first kind of solidified just kind of speeds up the process, makes it more efficient going into that B-roll edit.
putting together that story, and usually it's of the different interviews that we're filming for a company and laying that all out. What can be done early on in the process to really ensure that the editing side of it goes smoothly and that when we do arrive at a first draft, like there aren't tons of changes to what needs to be done in the edit or what has to be done to the main storyline?
Yeah, so communication's a big one. So just making sure everyone on the team is on the same page. So going into production, we internally have a number of meetings going over the script and going over what's going to be filmed for the shoot. So going into editing, then I know what I'm going to be working with. So that's a big part of it, is just having the story worked out ahead of time before going into post-production, or at least a plan for the story going into post-production is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And that really just helps speed up then and make the post-production process more efficient.
Yeah. And I know something that we do a lot is in the pre-production process with the client, really figuring out what is that story arc and trying to like one of the big questions is what's the core message? What are we trying to say? And then what are those like supporting points? Because then when we hand it off to you, sometimes, especially on the interview side of things, there's a lot to go through.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure when you've got clear direction of, okay, here's the core message and generally what the whole thing's saying, and here are the main points, everyone's more aligned when you go into the edit and the first draft that they see is on target.
Yeah, it just gives a clear direction going into post so that you know where the story is supposed to be going, and it gives you a target to be searching for when you're going through like the interview sound bites like you were mentioning. You can find those specific topics that we're hoping to cover.
Cool. This is our process we're talking about. So everyone's got a different editing process, but when a client gets that first draft, I mean, what are they typically commenting on? And then what's saved later on in the process for editing?
Yeah, so our post-production process here, we go through 2 or 3 rounds of revisions, and we keep it to that amount just to make that process go smoothly and to keep the project on schedule. And so that first cut that the clients are receiving, it's going to be a full story cut. So we'll have the A-roll cut in there with the sound bites. It will also have a B-roll edit on top with like the visual component placed in there. It will have some music. The one big thing that it will be missing at that point is it's not going to have final sound design. So there may not be sound effects throughout yet. If there is going to be sound design in it, there may not be like final color on the video. So shots will be like generally balanced from shot to shot, but we won't have done like the final color correction.
Some
on it
might
yet.
look a little bit gray or overexposed or dark, but all that gets fine-tuned. And when you say sound design, it's like sound effects and also loudness of music
overall,
and such.
Yeah. So overall volume of everything, making sure we're going to go in like once we get to what we call is picture lock, we're going to go in and like master all the audio, make sure it sounds like good throughout shot to shot, make sure everything's mixed and balanced, and then we'll do that final color correction at that point. So that first edit, we're more so looking for feedback on like the story. So we want to make sure that we're hitting the story beats like you were talking about before that we talked about in pre-production with the client. At this point, we're going to want to make sure that we're using the correct sound bites that we should be. And so that's the main form of feedback we're looking for at that first edit, is just like, is the story going in the right direction? Are the things that we should be adjusting to make it go in the right direction? And then generally, like, are we using the correct visual images to help complement that story?
Cool. And then we massage that. We eventually agree on it. Everything looks great. We master, we fine tune, and then it's done, right?
Yeah, just about. Yeah. yeah. So second review round, we send an updated version of the video based on that original feedback from review round 1. And for that second round, we're just making sure that, okay, now we've hit like everything that we need to.
Yep.
Are there still things that maybe are missing, or like certain visuals that aren't quite on like hitting the mark that we can switch out and make better? At that point, then we go into what's called picture lock. And once you hit picture lock, the main reason of that is just after that point, it's good to keep like the visual edits to a minimum. Because we will be going in and doing like that mastering of the sound and color correction. So that just ensures efficiency throughout the post process.
And what is most helpful for you from like, as you're going through to get from the client to set you up for success? Like what can the client be doing to, make sure everything goes as smoothly as possible?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, we use a really great platform called Frame.io, which we use for the revision process. And on there, the client's able to watch through the edit and leave feedback. What's really cool is the feedback's left like via time code. So then we can see in our editing program what point of the edit that note is for. So that's one really helpful thing, is just leaving those notes for us there, just so we can see them in the timeline as we're editing. Another big thing is just making sure like all the key decision makers are available like during the first review round. That's really big, so that everyone's being able to see that first edit and give feedback, making sure that just ensures that like the second and third rounds of revisions go more smoothly because everyone's seen it at the beginning. Yeah,
and that's something that, I mean, if not on the first round, getting them in on the second round, because if you wait until we're in the mastering phase, which like I can understand why some people would want to wait. It's going to look its best.
Yep.
But if there's any changes that happen, then it's usually out of scope. You start going over budget, there's overages, there's additional editing. And so, yeah, I 100% agree. Getting those decision makers in on the project, who needs to have a say on what's being said and how it's being said as early as possible, hopefully in pre-production, so that you're fixing it in pre-production versus fixing it in post if there are like major alignment issues. But yeah, 100%. What else? Or is there anything else that is helpful for you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just like communicating. So if something isn't going the direction that you are hoping for, it's good to communicate that. And we do have like but we do have meetings as well throughout the post-production process with the client to ensure that we're receiving that communication, receiving those notes.
Yeah, the more candid that the client can be with us about what's working and what isn't working, oh my gosh, it's gonna save so much of a headache and like pain down the road versus like waiting till the very end and being like, I'm just not feeling this, and then expressing it. Like, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I'm curious your perspective, but I want people to like just let me have it. Don't worry about hurting our feelings.
Oh, definitely.
if for some reason it's not working, like, we want to know.
Yeah, and that kind of communication in the like just throughout the process is going to make for a better end product. You're going to have a better video.
Yeah, and sometimes creatives have a reputation for like not taking feedback well, and so some people are afraid to give feedback or like be maybe more candid with the feedback. I mean, how do you approach feedback and handle that?
Yeah, so I always like and I've learned this throughout my process of being an editor, but I always am open to the feedback and really consider it from the client's perspective. I'm wanting to obviously make the video the best it can be, so I consider the feedback from that regard. Like, is this note going to improve the video? And if it is, it's like, I'm totally going to make this change.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
I want the video to be the best it can be, and any notes and feedback like that is going to help in that process.
Yeah. What's the saying? Kill your darlings.
Yeah, yeah,
A little
exactly.
bit of a morbid saying, but the idea of like, if we need to get rid of something that we might be attached as filmmakers to better the project. Like,
I mean, that's the coolest part about editing is like there's a million different ways you could go about cutting something, and like there's always a way you can cut it to make that note work.
yeah. And what like, is there anything else that makes great collaboration between the editing team and the client beyond that open and honest communication?
I mean, it's always fun to have fun, right?
Yeah.
Like, we want the process to be fun with the client, and like that stems not just in post-production, obviously, like throughout the whole process. So it's always fun to hear like that the client's enjoying the process and that they're enjoying the video and the final result. And it's fun to hear like afterwards, like hear from the client and like, oh, this video, like
Yeah.
we played it at an event and like it had a really great reception. Just really fun to hear that afterwards.
What's your favorite part of the post-production process, and where do you have most fun?
Yeah. So my favorite part is probably cutting like the visual aspect of the video edit, so the B-roll. I really enjoy telling the story visually, and that's always been one of my favorite parts. I also really enjoy like the special effects side when we get to do that on projects. So going into like After Effects and doing like green screen, it has always been a part that I've enjoyed a lot.
All right. So talking about that VFX side of things, visual effects, there's the saying "fix it in post," and it's usually referring to using visual effects to fix something in post. So tell me, like, what does "fix it in post" mean, and like, when should you fix it in post and when should you not? Like, when does it make you pull your hair out and when does it just make sense?
Yeah, so fix it in post is something you often hear in production on the day of a shoot.
I've said it many times.
Dan said it many times.
Guilty.
Yep. Fix it in post, basically it means like, is there a way we can use visual effects to fix a problem that we're encountering during the day of the shoot? So is there a way that we can like speed up the process on the day of the filming shoot just by bringing in the edit into, or bringing that problem into post and fixing it?
So give us an example of what that might be.
Yeah, so one example may be like, say there's a logo on a shirt and like there's obviously like no other clothing day of shooting that the actor could be wearing or that the subject could be wearing. That may be a fix it in post situation where it's like we could go in and remove the logo in post production versus going and buying a new shirt day of, like that's gonna waste a lot of time. So that may be one example.
Something that we get requested a lot is cleaning the background up. So we might film a B-roll shot or an interview and it's like, ooh, can you remove that? Maybe it's an outlet in the background, or maybe the floor was a little bit dirty. Can we somehow like clean it up?
Yeah,
that's possible, right?
Depends on the shot. It really depends on the shot. But yeah, it's definitely something we can consider day of, and it's something that. So the whole phrase "fix it in post," like it's something that's, if you can fix it on production, it's gonna be more efficient. It's gonna be probably the best. There are tools we can use to fix certain issues like we were talking about in post, but if possible, it's going to save a lot of time, a lot of money if you are able to fix it on the day of production.
Yeah. I mean, many things are fixable, but it becomes a question of money and time and like to really solve complex things that people usually look at Photoshop and be like, oh, you can fix that. Like video is not Photoshop. There's limitations unless you have a Hollywood budget,
right?
And then anything's possible,
right? Exactly.
But yeah, okay, fix it on set versus in post so you don't curl up and cry in a corner as we're editing. Got it. So as we wrap things up here, maybe share something that might surprise a client or someone, that we're working with about the post-production process, or like if they knew this, like that'd be, they might be surprised.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So I think the thing that would surprise clients the most is just typically with production, like you're filming out of order. So just the way we can go about cutting shots together in order to create a cohesive story. Sometimes that might not even be like a shot filmed the same day. So that might be a big surprise, is like there are like creative ways you can cut together different images from different locations in order to help tell a story.
Yeah.
And they're techniques that we use quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. With like Hollywood movies or things of that sort, like nothing is shot chronologically.
Right.
Same applies in this space. So for me, probably the most surprising thing is what we can do in the edit, and like in piecing interviews together to get them to say things that were never said the day of, and like what we call Frankensteining. Where we Frankenstein together an interview, and like we can pull pieces from the very end of a 30-minute interview in the beginning just to craft them to say the right thing. Or, if you're trying to have a lot of fun, you can craft them to say things completely different than what was ever talked about.
Yeah, not like we'd ever do that.
Not that we would ever do that.
But yeah, that is a
bloopers.
really cool part about how we go about shooting interviews, is we're filming with 2 cameras typically, and with that we're able to like make a lot of those types of cuts that you're talking about. We're trying to obviously keep the core of like what the the original subject.
We're
was
not
that they're
changing the
talking about.
intent.
Yeah, but we're able to clean up the interview, make it flow just a little bit more nicely for the actual edit itself, and there's a lot of cool like little editing techniques we can do to accomplish that.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Jared. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge with us about the post-production process, how to make it a more seamless process between client and video production team, and also talking a little bit about Fix It in Post and why we shouldn't fall back on that. But and thank you everyone who tuned in and listened to this episode. If you want to learn more about Blue Key Media, maybe you had questions about this specific episode, feel free to reach out to us at bluekeymedia.com or follow us on social media at Blue Key Media. But until next time, this is Dan West signing out.